Hello, you are listening to Marriage Underdogs Radio Show podcast, and I'm your host, Chris A. Matthews. And once again, I'm extremely excited about our phenomenal guest. We have pastors Christian Ray Flores and Deb Flores. Christian Ray is an artist, an entertainer, an evangelist, philanthropist, investor, and coach. And he and his wife, they are church planners of the Tribe Church in Austin, Texas. So thank you for being here.
We're glad to be here, man.
Thank you for having us.
And just to let those listening know, I was afforded the amazing opportunity to meet Christian and Deb in Austin when I was invited to actually host a marriage retreat at their church. And I just remember the night before, you guys were so gracious. You hosted my wife and I out for dinner. And we were out for hours just talking and getting to know each other. And one of the things I remember was how you guys were able to just look at each other. And there was this look of love and compassion and respect. And you guys have been married since 1999. So I just want to start by asking you guys, what have you done to keep that level of passion flowing all these years later?
I think for us, it's, I think our marriage is our anchor. It's the most important relationship we have on this earth. And I think sort of treating it as absolute, non-negotiable, central to our flourishing for our own sake, is sort of the key thing. It's that this is absolutely, uncompromisingly the most important relationship we have on earth. So I think that's probably the core thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think expressing gratitude for one another all the time, sharing with each other the things that we love about each other, staying focused on all the best parts of each other. I mean, marriage is hard. Life is hard. It's true. But when you're really committed to loving one another and staying in love, I mean, we've fought hard to stay in love, really to keep that, the desire to keep that romance and dating every week. We go on a date every week. He buys me flowers all the time, and just making the extra effort to show your spouse how much you love them and respect them and appreciate them and how attractive they still are to you. I think it's really important.
Well, I was pleased and privileged to view that for myself. And my wife and I, we mentioned that when we left, we were like, man, we hope as we continue to grow in marriage, because you guys are also empty nesters, having raised 3 amazing children. I know, Deb, you homeschooled 2 of the children as well. So can you share about that experience, more so not just as parents, but the transition into empty nesters? Because I'm sure those listening know that is an inflection point in a lot of marriages. So how are you guys managing and navigating this new season?
Yeah, that's a big life transition, and there's no preparing for it in the way that there's no way to really prepare for having a baby. You can read all the books and go to all the classes, but life just changes once a baby comes. And I think it's the same when they go off to college. I mean, it hits both parents. I think for me as a mom, I thought when our first one went off to college, I still had a little bit of time with the others. I thought, gosh, it's going to hit afterwards when they leave. And I realized, oh no, for me, it started hitting way before they left, months of that, just being able to talk through that because we had homeschooled for 13 years. I knew it was going to be a big transition with my daily life. I mean, that's a significant block of time where I had essentially, put part of my career on hold to focus on raising our kids. So for us, it was talking through really honestly about what even the day-to-day would look like. How much ministry would we continue to do together? How much would he pursue coaching other businesses that we have together? What my daily life would look like, and allowing myself time to grieve. Right. That was a big deal. We're really incredibly blessed because our girls all stayed within driving distance, and that's made a big difference. We see our girls a lot, almost every week. And that definitely helps my heart. But also, I had a very wise friend who said to me, don't consider yourself an empty nester until your kids have graduated from college or stopped going to college, because they still come home, you're still parenting, you're still in it with them. And that's been very true. I've learned we're still very much parenting our kids.
Man,
and
that's some good advice.
Our nest is not empty yet.
You know, the other thing is,
that's
honestly,
great.
there's no, as she said, there's no preparing, and there is a dip, right? There is we intellectually prepare, but emotionally and experientially, we're not prepared anyway, right? So for us, a key thing was the community that we built around us, the inner circle of people that know everything about us. When we dipped, and we did dip, and it was just a little disorienting emotionally, it's a bit funky, is tapping in. They catch us, right? They are in our lives, that we have rhythms together. So when they see us in a place of, okay, we need to reorient, recalibrate, they band around us, and they did that. So we had this period where people leaned in and helped us recalibrate, reestablish our baseline, and we went up from there. And it was just, I cannot stress this enough, just how important it is to have a community, not only a community in a broad sense, but a very tight inner circle, specifically in your life for these inflection points that you just mentioned.
I agree. I think I rely very heavily on the small group of women that we do life with, the couples that we do life with. I'll just say, I'm in my 50s. I have friends that are peers to me, both older and younger, but also the women in their 60s and 70s around me. I value their wisdom and insight so much. And I continue to run daily activities through them. Like, oh gosh, this is how I feel about this. And what about when you see this on the internet about your kid, or when your child posts that, or when they're having these challenges in school and you're not there, like, how do you lean into that? How do you speak into it? What's welcome advice? When do you let go? And just having women who've been ahead of me in that season of life to walk me through it is so helpful and so life-giving.
So the role models, right? I'm
Absolutely.
For those listening, having good role models, put yourself around people in different stages and phases of a marriage to be able to help you out. And when you think about the role you guys play as church leaders, can you share about the strategies you apply to keep yourselves collectively together as married couple, as a married couple? Because in a sense, I would assume, I'm not a pastor, but my wife and I are therapists. In a sense, as you're leading this group of people, do you ever find that your marriage is in a microscope sometimes? Like, what does it look like? Is there a level of perfection? Because you have people looking up to you guys as church leaders. So talk about how you manage the pressures of being leaders for others, but yet you're still human.
Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, for us, yes, of course, people are watching what you do. This is just part of the role. It just comes with the territory. But honestly, for us, we don't compare ourselves to others. We compare ourselves to ourselves yesterday. And I think that's really the most important strategy, because it removes that pressure. And it compares to us, we'll probably come back to this, to the marriage underdog that we both are, right? We are both come from places where the probabilities of a great marriage were very, very low. And so we just never forget that perspective. So our standards for our marriage are so high, honestly, not because we want to compete with anybody, but because we treasure our marriage so much that, quite frankly, I think our challenge with our people is not that they go, well, they're not good enough in their marriage. They usually feel insecure about their marriage. So, it's a different set of problems. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, they're not really judging you guys, it sounds like.
No, not really, no. And also, we have this culture, and we have a very, very authentic, organic community. So the culture of transparency and vulnerability is a baseline. So even when I speak on Sundays, I pretty much share all of our stuff, obviously within boundaries and with permission, but everybody knows our stuff. Like it's completely transparent. And when you open up and say, hey, here's me, warts and all, it takes the pressure off as well, because there's nothing hidden in our relationship with our congregation.
Mm-hmm.
And your examples too, for people to follow, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I do think that's important in any leadership role, not just in ministry, but for us, particularly in ministry, that we're holding up Jesus Christ as the example, not ourselves. This is what it looks like for us trying to follow him. But authenticity, just being real, we're in it with people. It's not like we're up here and calling other people to be something that we're not striving to be ourselves. So the more honest and vulnerable we are with our congregation or the people that we're reaching out to, the more effective we are in our ministry.
Yeah, and I felt that, having experienced time with you both, the authenticity is definitely there, and it bleeds out in everything you do. And Christian, I know that as a coach, you target high achievers, and I want you to share a little bit more about the population you coach and what inspired you or motivated you to get into the coaching industry.
I think it's mostly my heart for men who have both the giftedness and the flat size that I have, right? So there's sort of a breed of people, high achievers, strivers, they call them. And I'm one of those, right? I'm one of those guys. And we tend to be nature and nurture, gifted with abilities and drive and focus and talent that is sort of off the charts. And that's both a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing is you end up leading companies or churches or nonprofits. You're in leadership positions. You have this quality about you. The downside is usually hidden because of the admiration, respect that people have for you, sort of the public persona. And what happens is that's the weakness. The weakness is we take that admiration, this success that we have, and we double down on it, and we start ignoring the weaknesses, the weak spots. Those weaknesses become blind spots. Usually we overinvest in work and we underinvest in relationships and in family.
Wow, can you say that one more time? That was a mic drop right there. Say it one more time.
We overinvest in work and we underinvest in deep relationships and in family.
Overinvest in work and then underinvest in deep relationships and family. Wow.
Yeah. So because our work brings us a lot of success in praise and admiration, we feel validated in that, and so we pursue that, double down on that, and usually our families, our children, our wives, our husbands, our closest friends, they suffer. And we suffer because we're not surrounded by them, and we don't invest in that, and it catches up with us. And what I focus on is I work with professionals and leaders in business and nonprofit work and pastors, because it catches up with us enough where we have to at some point stop and recalibrate our lives so that we can thrive long-term. Basically, the skills that took us where we are very different from the skills that are going to take us to the next level. And I focus on that, helping people gather and deploy the new skills that will take them to the next level, help them thrive for life, have more impact than before, and not be sort of stuck in this sort of plateaued mode for a long time, which is really terrible.
Yeah. Now I want to ask, Deb, being with Christian as long as you have, I know that usually when you have a phenomenal leader like him, you see an amazing helpmate, a wife, a spouse on the side of that leader, right? So I want to ask you, Deb, share moments within your marriage where those transitions took place, where, did you have to sit Christian down and say, hey, look, I know you're traveling the world, I know you're doing these amazing things, but I need you here too. Like, what did that conversation look like? What do some of those moments look like?
We had many conversations like that.
Yeah.
Pick one of many.
Yeah, that comes up every few years, probably. Every time we start a new venture or a new nonprofit, or we make a big move, especially if it's a big international move. honestly, one of the things I appreciate most about Christian is that he's got a solid group of men around him, and we've both given each other permission. Like, here are our people. Sometimes they're other married couples, sometimes they're individuals, where when we need help, we talk to each other first, but then we each have permission to go to our people, and we'll pull in another couple and we'll say, we'll put it all out on the table. This is where we're at. And like the raw, brutal, he said, she said, and this is how it made me feel, and just show the uglies to people. That's helped us through, because it helps us navigate even what's just an emotional response, and where do we really need to be strategic about how we're going to start in this new venture. The first one that comes to my mind is
Jamaica.
Yeah, man, Jamaica, man.
What's the Jamaica story?
Jamaica, man.
Okay, tell the story. That's the big one.
So I had a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old, and we had just moved to America. We had left Russia because of my health. I was very sick there. And Christian had, I think it was like 9 trips in 10 weeks or 10 trips in 9 weeks. And I was home with 2 little kids and a double stroller in an apartment, 2nd floor with no elevator. Wow. And couldn't function really. And when we all got sick, the kids and I got sick, and he was in Jamaica at a conference.
At a big medical conference, I believe.
Yeah. And I remember calling him and just saying, I don't care. Come home now. Now. Pack your bag, go to the airport, wait for the next flight out, but come home now. We need you. And he did. He waited in an airport and could not get out any earlier, still ended up on the same flight home. But when he got back, we went in and we sat down with
the CEO of our
and president, sat down with the couple that was head of that organization, and said, this is where it's at, and this is what the last 9-10 weeks have looked like for us. And honestly, they were terrific. They didn't even realize it. There was so much coming at them from so many different ways, and we sort of put a moratorium on travel there for a while, got our kids on a routine. Christian stayed home, and we definitely both made the commitment, look, it's got to be family first. And I really respect his commitment to that. Like he said about being a high achiever, like his desire to be a great husband and a great dad first and foremost is what gets us through those times.
And that's a great illustration.
I want to comment though, Deb, because a lot of women listening, especially those that I've counseled couples, to have the courage, the faith, the ability to tell your husband in that moment, hey, this is what I need. And then Christian, you following suit, right? Like,
yep.
There was not ego or power struggle. It was, I know I need my husband. I'm going to tell him. And to understand your wife needed you to the point where it was like, I'm on the way, right? That just is a testament of the love and respect you have for each other.
Yeah, I got my bags and went to the airport, and I was like, get me on a plane, any plane, I don't care. That's what I did. But I think, what I love about Deb, and if you're listening and you're a woman and a wife or a husband or a high achiever, actually goes both ways, speak up. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, 100%. Healthy conflict is part of any good relationship. If you don't know how to fight, you're not going to have a good marriage, period. And for whoever is the high achiever in the family, or both are sometimes, I think both of us are, and is listen. And then you have to understand, look, the success of your life is dependent on the success of your marriage. There's no ifs and buts about it. You will not have a great life if you don't have a good marriage. So for me, I have to curtail and fight against my sort of natural instinct to idolize work and say, this is not going to be my idol. I'm going to put it in the right place. And my marriage comes first. My parenting comes first. And I'll tell you, I've made way less money than I could have made if I just went with my instincts. And I decided early on, it's just not going to be the case with me. Mm-hmm. I am going to, our lives are intertwined. Mm-hmm. They're one of the same tapestry. Our lives are weaved together with each other, and they're weaved together with our children. So we homeschooled our children. which is a sacrifice and an investment, right? So I have not missed one event in my 3 daughters' lives, not one.
Wow.
Bedtime stories, family adventure days every single week of some sort, because that time goes in a flash.
And that
It
was
really
the
does.
priority, though. You
Absolutely.
made your family your priority. And to go back to something you said about fight, and I want to highlight that word fight, because sometimes couples listening might think that you're talking about fighting for each other. Fighting
with
each
each other.
What I heard is you're fighting for each other.
For each other, exactly.
For the marriage. And if you look at the marriage as this shared space, as you look at the marriage as this third entity outside of yourselves, you both chose to fight for it. And that was the collective. And, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, we're really big in systems theory, right? The sum is greater than individual parts. So you both chose the sum of the 5 of you all versus one person. And I want to go deeper into that, because Christian, when you get a higher achiever in as a coaching client, talk about where they start and where they end after working with you, that transitional period where you take them.
Yeah, well, basically, thank you for asking. It's remarkable how predictable some of those patterns are, which is, part of us goes, well, I'm so basic, like I fall into the same traps. Yes, and there's good news to that, because then you're not unique, and there's solutions that are available to you that will have worked for many, many men before and will work for many, many men afterwards. And if you learn those skills, you can actually help your friends. So most of the time, they're high on work, predictably so, high on achievement, low on family, low on parenting, and low on deep, meaningful peer relationships. Because those usually speak truth to you,
So low on connection, it sounds like the intimate.
Low on connection, yeah. But then what happens is the chain reaction is, because I have this triangle of fulfillment and thriving that I teach them, right? And they use this triangle, this lens almost, to look at you can look at your week, you can look at your work environment, you can look at your marriage, you can look at your church community, and it's 3 things that are the most valuable things for you to thrive. The first one is meaning. So having a spiritual practice puts you in perspective. You're not the center of the universe if you're healthy. If you're not healthy, you are the center of the universe. You might not say that, but that's how you act, right? So the narcissistic tendencies come from those things. So having a spiritual practice, meaning, is huge, because it gives you perspective. It gives you a grand picture of things, and you can find yourself in that and give yourself authority and identity and purpose.
So the meaning is the foundation, then, right? So you're building everything on that meaning.
Precisely. Yeah. Okay. The second dimension is connection, right? Is connection. So it's community, friendship, love, marriage, parenting, all of those things, how you connect with other people. The third one is delight. And that's sort of the surprising thing with a lot of Christians, because, happiness, joy, these things they're spoken a lot, but in our culture, they're really diminished in Western culture, because we're so stressed out, anxious, and quite frankly, depressed. Like 50% of the US population are depressed. So delight is our natural state of being. And finding delight in daily things and developing routines and habits to find that delight is a huge deal. Is a game changer, because your brain wakes up, your creativity wakes up, the way you are around people wakes up. So if you have a combination of delight, connection, and meaning, and you start nurturing that in a very intentional way, it changes everything. But to give you an illustration, for example, you asked me, okay, what's the intake on the out?
Intake in process.
So a classic illustration of an intake is somebody who I spoke to recently, who actually didn't join the program, and that's the reason he didn't join the program, because I told him, I can help you with the most important thing, not the thing that you want. Sometimes what you want is not what you need, right? So what he
you
wanted,
want isn't always what you need. Keep going.
exactly.
Highlight
So,
that. Yeah.
so I'll give you an illustration of a classic person who needs it but doesn't wants something else. So this is a guy. He's in real estate. Works in a real estate conglomerate. He is responsible for, if I remember correctly, $68 million of revenue a year. And what he wants is coaching in how to make his boss appreciate him more and value his work, because he brings $68 million to the table a year. And when I ask him questions, okay, what's the quality of your life? And I'm asking, of course, around those three things: delight, meaning, connection. And he drinks a little bit too much. He's not a drunk. He just, medicates, self-medicates.
Right.
He sees his family, barely sees his family, sees them really only on the weekends. And he's been in this city. It's a big, rich city. For 7 years, he has 0 friends.
So if his wife was to make the call Deb made, he wouldn't be the first one on the flight.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So basically what I tell him, I said, look, your problem is not with your boss. The problem is how you lead your life. You need habits, systems, and skills that make you the person that is now highly valued by your boss. You're not that person right now. That's basically it. Gotcha. And that's, I would say, that describes, to one degree or another, 99% of the people that work with me is people that have an unbalanced, uncalibrated life.
Meaning, connection, and delight.
Yeah.
And one of the joys of spending time with you both, Deb, I remember you and Christian talking about your nightly walk. Can you share the value of having these rituals and routines that create delight?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. The sacred rhythms, we would call them, that really have helped us so much. And it's not something that we started out doing. These are things that we learned along the way, but the daily practices and the disciplines of that connection time, for us, it's the evening walk. And it's a little bit later in the evening now because it's hot in Texas in the summer. So when the sun goes down, we'll take our dog out for a walk as soon as the pavement's cool enough. But it's a time for us to reconnect and just talk through our days. And often we're working together during the days, but also we can very easily get busy with different meetings. So it's a time for us to catch up, not only on how our day went, but emotionally, how we're both feeling about it. I mean, there's a lot of emotion that comes with our days. And I think if we just get busy and we push through it, that builds up. And then little things will trigger, and there'll be emotional outbursts where, when you're able to talk through those feelings regularly, they don't sneak up on you quite as much. You have
a set time for it too, it sounds like, as well. Like, you have that ritual and routine built into the marriage.
Yeah.
And, it's really systematic in a way, because no matter what's going on, at the end of the day, you're going to close out together as one. It's that resynchronization process that I love that you guys are doing.
We do. And we have a few practices like that. Like, our daily walk is definitely a big and helpful one for both of us. We also go to bed together every night. We've been married it'll be 24 years in September 4th. And unless one of us is traveling, and on the rare occasions when someone has to stay up to care for a sick child or elderly parent, we go to bed together every night. And it takes me a little longer with my nighttime routine than it takes Christian, of course. So he'll be in bed and he'll read and he'll wait for me. But going to bed together every night, we made that commitment to one another when we got married. We do not sleep separately. No one will ever sleep on the couch. Whatever we need to settle before the sun goes down, okay, even if it's after dark, before we fall asleep, we will work through it. We go to bed together every night. We have a date every week. When our kids were little, we did co-ops to work out babysitting, because that can get expensive. We did family dates and backyard dinners on the patio and whatever we need to make sure that we keep date night special. Can't remember the last time we missed a date. And then we Sabbath. We Sabbath on Saturdays. We take the day off and we rest and delight in each other, delight in our kids. Again, that's something, we call it a practice for a reason, because there's always something coming up. I mean, we're in the ministry. I feel like women's ministry is always happening on Saturdays. We have baby showers and bridal showers and kids' birthdays, but we've learned to really pick and choose, do one thing, delight in each other, delight in our kids, and rest. And that keeps us steady and consistent.
Wow, you guys have put on a master class for all the couples listening. And to just highlight going to bed together.
Yes.
That's amazing. Creating.
Yeah, that's the best part for sure.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. And then I love delight. And it's an easy system to remember. And, I want to ask you, for the couples out there listening in general, if you were just to kind of look at the state of marriage, how would you guys define the current state of marriage in terms of what do you think some of the greatest challenges are for marriage right now, married couples right now?
I think from my perspective, a big part of it has to do with foundational roles, biblical roles in the marriage.
Absolutely.
Because they are sort of attack question diluted in sort of the public square, which is fine, but you have to find what is it that you believe in, right? The other thing is, I would say that the overarching culture of workaholism, idolatry of work, the idolatry of materialism, the keeping up with the Joneses, that's a tremendous idolatrous overlaying culture that we don't even notice, even as Christians many times, right? Because it's sort of in the air. You don't notice, like a fish in the water doesn't know it's wet. Christians can be Christians, they can go to church, they don't know that they have an idolatrous streak to them. When they work, they're busy, they're stressed, they're anxious. That's not the normal state of a believer. And I don't want to sort of make you feel bad if you're listening and you're a Christian and you're sort of anxious. That's not the point. My point is, clearly in Scripture, there's a teaching and a presence of shalom, right, as the standard, right? And that has been, I think, diluted in culture in general. So everything suffers. Marriage suffers, work suffers, excellence, creativity suffers. Delight is diminished, and delight is no longer an aspiration, I think. It's almost like, yeah, that would be nice. And what I'll tell you is that's not only is it a nice to have, is a need to have.
Right. And you deserve to have that as a Christian.
Absolutely.
That's really the message that I'm hearing you say to those listening. The reason why you provide the services and the programs you offer, the reason why you and your wife are in ministry is not just for you, but for people to see God and have that personal relationship. And you both are representatives of the light, not only by way of teaching it, but helping others receive it. So everything you're saying is in alignment to what it would be, or what we should be doing as Christians, not just getting it for ourselves, but helping other people get it as well. And you've made that a big piece of your lives in terms of your ministries, your nonprofit, your philanthropy work, your coaching, all of what you do. You talk about, like, you reap what you sow. Well, you have an abundant harvest because of what you guys have sowed.
Exactly.
And that's just beautiful, and it's powerful. Now, as we transition out, as you guys are aware, the show being Marriage Underdogs, and you alluded to this earlier, I would love for you to share a little bit about what made you guys underdogs and how you've transitioned to have this phenomenal marriage, despite some of the facts correlated to research that may indicate that a couple may not be successful. And for those that are listening and are subscribers of our show, you all are aware that my wife and I, we have 7 out of 10 of the underdog characteristics, right? So I just wanted to hear your story in terms of how you guys have been able to prevail and be so successful in marriage, despite on paper it not being statistically proven to be that way.
Sure. I can start with a little bit of our backstory. I think one of the obvious things about us is that we're mixed marriage. We're biracial. We're international. I grew up in a very small town in Wisconsin, and am definitely American. My husband grew up everywhere else. He's half Russian, half Chilean, and lived in several other countries. When we met, I was living in Los Angeles and he was living in Moscow, Russia. We were both working in the entertainment industry, and that's not known for being a field where people have very successful marriages.
Right.
Christian came from a broken home, and my parents had separated for a while. Actually, they went through some really dark times and overcoming addictions and mental health challenges. And they stayed married, which definitely played into my desire to stay married as well. But we had our first big challenge, obviously, would be that we spoke different languages. We had a couple that we overlapped on, but I did not speak Russian, and I fell in love with a man that lived in Russia. So moving to Moscow, that was a big cultural change, obviously, and there was a language barrier to overcome. And then I had some physical health challenges, and at one point we ended up obviously moving back here to the United States. Christian was very well known, both as a preacher, but also as a pop star in Russia at the time, definitely in the 90s. And for him to be willing to give that up and move to America, for me, each of us making big life sacrifices for the other person and for our marriage, I think definitely increased our trust and faith both in each other and in God that we could get through these things. So that's a little bit from my perspective.
Yeah. Now, before you go, Christian, what I want to highlight the sacrifice, and it just goes back to some of the principles you shared earlier about intentional commitments and choosing to be married and choosing your partner. That's a beautiful story because, the language barrier, there was so many things that you guys were able to overcome. And it sounds like it just strengthened you as you continue to prevail and grow in marriage.
Yeah, it definitely did. I'll let Christian share a little bit more about what I consider my bonus child, but our blended family dynamic, and you can share how that's played out as well for us.
So for me, I'm honestly like the poster child of Underdog, to be honest with you, because I come from literally 3 generations of broken homes. We're talking 100 years, a century of broken homes where just marriages didn't stay together. One of my children was born out of wedlock, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I really, really was a terrible, example. And I didn't have any. I just had no idea how to do this. As a matter of fact, my coming to the faith, one of the pain points was family. Well, actually, was the pain point. I had this. So I tell the story over and over again because I'm so grateful for it because it was a turning point. I was entertaining millions of people all across 15 countries, selling millions of albums, and I was completely and utterly depressed and empty. And the reason for that was because I had lost another relationship, actually drove the person away, and lost my daughter in the process. And I was just at rock bottom. And I was in the kitchen of a pastor who was telling me about the Bible, and I had no idea, I didn't know anything about the Bible. And I just saw his dynamic with his wife and his daughter, his little daughter. And I basically turned to him. It was that clear to me. I said, how can I have what you have?
Wow.
How can I get that? And he said, I'll teach you. And I just turned myself in, and that was it. And I basically started a quest where I said, I'm going to be the best husband. It's not going to be not only a blind spot, it's not going to even be a weakness. I can be a terrible artist, a terrible entrepreneur. I can go downhill financially, but I will be the best husband and the best parent. Wow. And that's what I did. And it was just the relentless pursuit of the best possible core thing to be a husband. And that's why I'm passionate about coaching high achievers, because I'm a high achiever and I've suffered tremendously out of some of the blind spots that are classic for high achievers. You idolize work and you underperform and you're terrible at other things. And I'm here to tell you, if I can do it, you can do it, right? And you're going to be a better high achiever because you can do more things for more people in more places, which is my life story.
Wow. Man, that's so beautiful because you found your purpose through your pain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
And
now
then
you're
finding
helping so
Deb
many
was
people.
finding Deb was this kiss from God, right? It was this supernatural um, gift, right? Because God, I'm unworthy, I am messed up, but I'm repentant. And then God basically looked at me and my changed heart, and I feel like he just gave me one of his best daughters.
Mm. Wow. That's special. And outside of just what you're saying, to have been privileged to watch it, right? Like, for those that are unable to see the video, I'm looking at the two of you right now, hand in hand, and it's the same look that I saw the night before the speaking engagement where we were all at dinner. It's the same look that I saw on a Zoom call, of a FaceTime call, when you describe your wife anytime I speak to you. It was the same emotion through the phone when you shared. For those listening, you had to reschedule the interview because Deb had COVID. And it wasn't just that she had COVID, it was this adoration and this respect and concern, like, hey, I can't move any further without my wife. Like, I gotta make sure she's okay first.
Yep.
And that's you being that example of putting your family first. And you've lived up to that promise, my friend. Like, I've got to witness it, I hear it. And the fact that you're helping so many other men who've gone down the journey you've gone down do the same thing is a blessing.
Thank
And
you.
I'm just thankful. I want to end with just giving you an opportunity to share to all the listeners how they can get in contact with you both, your ministry, your coaching programs, your philanthropy work, all of the amazing things you're doing, because I just want to hopefully use this platform for you to continue to be a blessing to others.
Mhm.
Well, thanks for asking. If you go to exponential.life, exponential without the E, just starting with the X, exponential.life, that's my coaching website. And it has basically what I do. There's a free masterclass you can download that explains a lot of stuff. That's really, I highly recommend taking it, and it's free. If you go to atxtribe.org, that's our church, and you can see a lot of the dimensions of our community there. If you want to see the philanthropy work that we do, we help refugees in Ukraine, and we have an after-school academy in Africa. You can go to www.ascend, as in going up, ascend mission. Oh, no, hold on. Ascend mission, ascendmission.fund. So I'm confusing. There's like 2 or 3 URLs there. That's the philanthropy work, basically.
Yeah, I'll say on that just a couple of quick things close to our heart. And you can find this on atxtribe.org or on Christian's Headspace podcast. He shares about it as well. But the projects that we have, one is Christian spent some of his formative years in Mozambique, Africa, and we've gone back to Mozambique. Prior to getting married, I lived in Brazil and spoke Portuguese. Christian learned Portuguese there. So being on a mission field, Mozambique is Portuguese speaking. We've taken mission teams with us there to help and start this after school academy in Mozambique, in Maputo, which is the capital and one of the poorest regions in southeastern Africa. And you'll find out more about the work we do in Mozambique there under the Ascend Mission Fund. But then the other one is the Ukraine Relief Network, which started basically February 24th, shortly after the most recent invasion of Russia to Ukraine. As we mentioned, we were married in Moscow, lived in Russia, then we moved to Ukraine. So 2 of our 3 girls, 2 were born in Moscow, and our youngest was born in Ukraine. So it's been a painful year and a half, but it's also been a privilege to be able to serve our friends and extended friends and family, both in Russia and Ukraine, but especially this project that we have with Ukraine Relief Network is very dear to our hearts. And you can find out about the Ukraine Relief Network under the Ascend Mission Fund as well.
Yeah. Or if you can just have access to basically everything, just go to christianrayflores.com and sign up for my newsletter. And I share all kinds of news and opportunities and dimensions and content there.
Yeah, you guys are just doing some phenomenal work. And when you think about the global community that you've established and have transitioned that into global impact, right? So you went from global community to global impact, and all of the work that you're doing by way of your faith-based leadership, your entrepreneur work, your investing work, your coaching, your philanthropy, you are definitely both a model of what it means to be a marriage underdog and prevail. And not only did you allow your setbacks to be setups for comebacks, but you have chosen to reach back and pull others forward. And that is what being an underdog is really about. Not just helping yourself, but being willing to help each other, help others. You've been listening to Marriage Underdogs, and I just want to give another thank you to Christian Ray Flores and Deb Flores for being guests on the show. Please subscribe to our show by way of Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave comments. And once again, we hope to provide some high quality content next week, as we'll have new guests. And thank you guys for listening. And this is Chris A. Matthews signing off.